let's welcome Brian to us today.
All right, good deal. Well, thank you so much for coming, everybody. This is quite an honor and a privilege to be out here in Colorado again. The last time I was here, I was with my son. We did a Dynamic Communicators conference with Ken Davis. That was a lot of fun. So, and they actually introduced me. I was interviewed yesterday, and we'll get to that for RSR, Real Science Radio. This is a little bit about what I do. I've got a new web page now called solidifyyourfaith.weebly.com. And my brother asked me, well, what does Weebly mean? And I said, it means I'm cheap. It's a free website, so the less money I spend on that, the more money I have to do what God wants me to do. And I give creation talks at churches, schools, colleges, kids. This is the first talk that I gave at St. Cloud State University. And it was, who's your daddy? Theory of crises, guaranteed not to make a monkey out of you. And the Atheist Club was there, and so it was a fun event. But I bring that to the community college too. I had that poster, and we were doing the talk again, and then they had a free speech zone out in the middle of nowhere, and I didn't have a kiosk. So I just took that poster and I went to their lunchroom, and I ordered lunch, and I sat by the door at the high table, and everybody had to walk out by that door, and I taped it to the thing, and it inspired some good conversation. But then we do this evolution versus science. You know, and a kid says, how can you have evolution versus science when evolution is science? So we had to help them understand that science is actually observable and testable and repeatable, and evolution's none of that. And this is a talk that I gave at a state college in Florida. And there's 4 or 5 students, a bunch of professors, and they all got Chick-fil-A at the end, 120-some people. And before I went up there, I asked the advisor, do you want me to share the gospel? And he said, that's why we're doing this. And so I was brought in to say what they couldn't say. And so if there's any colleges out there, you want a hired gun, here we go. And that talk is actually on a DVD on my table. It's How to Win the Culture War. It's on those DVDs, they're just they're a thank you for a donation of any amount. So just that's my way of saying thanks. And there's actually 3 talks on that DVD. And the first talk is Behind Enemy Lines, where we take a look at what's happening in America. You know, what's the situation and what can we do about it? What's our mission? And then how do we execute it? And that monument you see right there, it's an 81-foot granite monument pointing to God, holding a Bible on government land. So our forefathers were not atheists. That's what it's called, Monument to Our Forefathers. And it's got the diagram of, if we ever lose our liberty, this is how you get it back. And I encourage you to watch that one. And then I also gave a talk, Get in the Game. This is like a halftime of your life. This is the halftime, and I'm the coach. And what are we going to do at the next half of our life? You know, are we going to focus on important or essential? And we relate it to a basketball game, and we play Pictionary and everything. And you've never seen a talk like this. I guarantee you've never seen a talk like that. And again, those are on the DVD. They're also on my YouTube channel called Solidify Your Faith. So it's all available. I got a heart to reach the college students. This is me in the free speech zone at St. Cloud State, and the question of the day is, where's your faith? Nothing exploded or God created? And I have that on our poster inside too. It's like we all have faith. And we have conversations. I was able to meet enough students to organize them to make a Grace Campus Fellowship. It's a ministry of our church, and so we have access to their facilities. And so we showed creation movies every week, and the tagline was, explore with open minds, not limited to theories of blind chance and random collisions of atoms. And because in class, my thing is you need to see both sides if you want to think. And they're only getting one side in class. And I'm trying to, so it's like, if you guys want to get educated, you're going to have to educate yourself. You're getting indoctrinated in the classroom because you're not allowed to see both sides. And then this one was up there too, enjoy the freedom to think outside the intolerant dogma of materialism. And I'd love to get these bracelets, wristbands that say freedom to think. Everybody should be for that, even the professors, right? And then after that gains speed, then we'd want to do come out of the closet day. Let people know you're a creationist and not lose your job, because there's a witch hunt going on. And then we got Science Diversity Night. They're always talking about diversity. How about a diversity of thought in the science room? How about creation peer-reviewed journals in the library and in the science? And I tried. I've been there, and we had discussions. And I'm not sure if you know this, but St. Cloud State is not a Bible college. It's not even close. These are posters that are hanging there right now. I took that picture on Sunday. And our events may not even be so important as what we get to hang up on campus. So you got their views on the edges, the drag brunch and the LGBTQers there, and then we're right in the middle, inviting them out to church and have a free meal afterwards. And it says, where does your path lead? We want people to start thinking about eternity. And about an hour away, I helped a community college start a campus Bible fellowship. They wanted to do a Bible study every week, right in the front of everybody. Not in a classroom, but right there in front of everybody. And I said, good for you. Because when life falls apart for those people, they're not going to go to the atheists. Atheists don't have comfort. They're going to need to know who the Christians are. And this is a private college where we give our talks at our Twin Cities Creation Science Association talks. The students at that college didn't even know that we were bringing in Jerry Bergman and Rob Carter and Randy Galuza, these big hitters, brilliant people coming into their campus, and they didn't even know about it. So I was like, well, we got to start a club here. So now at least it gets to be announced in chapel. And then COVID hit and pretty much wiped that all out, so now we're starting over. I almost got a club going at Liberty. And there was 50-some students that gave me their email address and said, yeah, we want to know when you're doing creation stuff. There was 8 or 9 of them that said, yeah, I want to help lead this club. And so we had everything. And Liberty, if anybody's watching this online, you could have the most powerful and most effective and easiest club to run in the history of the world, because you're already paying people to come in and speak at your convocations. Just have a creationist come in every week or every month. And the night before he talks to the students, have him talk to the community. Invite the churches, the pastors, the schools, the parents, and so then they can come in and they can learn how to fight this evolutionary battle, because that's key. That's key. And I had it all on a silver platter for their advisor. Even the Constitution had it all written up, and he dropped the ball. So that club never got off the ground. So if anybody watches this online, email me at solidifyyourfaith@hotmail.com. Let's get this rolling. And so I've realized, it's hard to work. It's now trying to get creation clubs in every community. You don't have to go through all the red tape, but you just need somebody who understands the issue and a place to meet. And then you use these local communities, like 10, 20, 30 miles from here, in these local communities, and have an event right before this event. And say, hey, if you like this movie, you'll love that speaker. Who wants a carpool? And so we did this in St. Cloud. We got a local club going, and we were showing creation movies at the public library. And so then COVID hit, and now we were meeting at a church, and we're thinking about going back to the library because people might come to the library and not to church. And so we're thinking about that. And I've helped a couple of communities start them. And again, I'm at the county fair. This is the booth. I think there should be a creation club at every county fair. And I just do surveys as they're walking by. This one is, hey, what came first, the chicken or the egg? And it's like, I didn't know this till I was 32. And I heard somebody say, God said he made the birds, not the eggs. And he didn't stutter. And besides, if he made the eggs, what's going to hatch them? And now I just recently learned this year, it's like God made the chickens with the eggs inside. And it just took time for the eggs to come out. And so, I do stroke tallies. And the chicken beat 1 by 4. The next day was, how did life begin? Somehow, or God, because I have a science college textbook that explains how life began. Somehow, despite the harsh environment, the first living organisms appeared. Somehow. So God won there in a landslide. Next question, did hydrogen and helium turn into people? Because that's what they got from the Big Bang, right? Does that turn into people? And 52 people said yes, but the vast majority said no. And 45 said don't know. And then the last day was, hey, what are you? A mutated animal, like the textbook says? Or are you made in God's image, like the Bible says? And God wins again. And this is great, because you know how much money they've spent trying to indoctrinate people to think in evolution? Decades and millions, if not trillions, billions, maybe even trillions. And it's not working. And so, we got the truth. And so I go to other colleges, and then how did we get here? Creation, evolution, intelligent design, or don't know. This is at our community college, and it was 42-17, creation won. So in a secular college, this is St. Cloud State. I figured evolution would win, but I thought it would be a landslide, and it wasn't. It was 43-39. I did this at Penn State Altoona campus, and it was 19-13, evolution won, but it's still pretty close. And then this this event was at St. Cloud. They had some business owners got together, said, let's get some Christian bands, some activities, some gospel. And I like it. I like them promoting that stuff instead of some of those other causes. And that they gave me a table there too. And so I asked, when did dinosaurs live? Was it millions of years ago or thousands of years ago? Because this is mainly Christians coming. They're going to know about the chicken and life. And I said, well, how do you understand dinosaurs? And 81 to 51, millions of years, 1. And then how did life begin? God won, 84 to 2. So they understood God created, but they don't understand the biblical interpretation of dinosaurs. And so there's a need for that. And kids, man, they love dinosaurs. And dinosaurs are the gateway drug to evolution, and evolution's the gateway drug to atheism. And they're starting really young. Those kids know all the dinosaurs, all the millions of years. And so I'm going down where the kids are too. If I get invited to a VBS to speak, I take it. And those are the funnest talks. I really enjoy those. And then I did this one talk. This is out in Wisconsin. They said, you're coming through. How would you like to do our VBS? How would you like to design the curriculum? And so I did, and I had all the worksheets and all that stuff, and they went through, and the pastor, he Facebooked me, and he said, some say it was the best VBS we've ever had. So I've been focused on creation. And then COVID hit. I don't know if you heard about that here or not, but I heard about this tyranny that was coming. And so I've expanded, and I'm telling people what powerful evolutionists are doing, plan to do. And I was invited to speak in South Dakota, and my talk was exposing tyranny. And I just, that was professionally done. That was up on their website. Their website came down, so I put it up on my Rumble channel, Education, Not Indoctrination. And then I was invited out to Pennsylvania, Christian Apologetics Seminar. And I spoke 3 times. They had me do the curriculum for that. That was fun. But on the way out, I want to get the most of my miles. And this Wisconsin church said, hey, how about you do a creation science revival? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I said, how about we do a creation Sunday, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we'll do a revival of truth that's been censored, because they've been censoring a lot. I even got, so Monday night we took a look behind the vaccine curtain. This is before COVID, and showed them clips of what vaccine experts are saying under oath. And then Tuesday we looked at the COVID corruption, so hopefully they don't we'll stop them from doing that again. And then Wednesday was a look at what the tyrants are trying to put in place to control us, like digital currency, climate credits, vaccine passports. We have to know. They're telling us what they're going to do. And boy, if they get those things, we have to watch out. So there's another DVD over there for a donation of any amount, and that's the Revival of Truth. That's just Monday's talk. That's just one talk. But you flip it over, and it's going to show you where you can get into my Rumble channel, and you can watch them all for free. Rumble channel, Revival of Truth. I made it specifically for that. And last fall, I had a Revival of Truth table at the fair. And so that was fun. And then I got interviewed on Real Science Radio. And the topic was, should I vaccinate my baby? And we talked about, and we need all the information before we make irreversible decisions. And so we put it up, and YouTube took it down. And so if you want to see what Rumble or what YouTube has censored, go into Rumble. It's a brand new channel. I think there's only 2 people liked it. But when they censor us, the way you beat censorship is you look at it and you share it. Because Taiwan, they don't look at China's news to see what's going on. They look at what's being censored to see what's going on. And that is censored. And so if you're interested in that, and again, I'm not telling people what to do, but I'm saying get all the information before you make decisions. And also, I was interviewed last year on the Real Science Radio. It was the Great Reset and Hackable Animals. And somebody listened to that in Kentucky, and he said, you know what? Now I'm binge watching your Solidify Your Faith videos. I can't stop. They're great. And so that's on my Solidify Your Faith YouTube channel. And so you can check them out. And so enough about me. Now let's dive into why you came here. This is God's amazing designs versus man's devious plans. So we're going to look at the design, look at their plans, and then end up with some more of God's amazing designs. So let's start with God's design. I believe we are living in the midst of a paradigm shift. When there's lies that are being taught, those lies eventually crumble. And it's happened in the past. They used to think that the sun went around the earth, and that was wrong. And Galileo helped to expose that, and they persecuted him. And then spontaneous generation. They taught that for thousands of years. If you want to make life, it just pops into existence. Just put some meat on the counter, you'll make maggots. You want to make mice, just put some grain and rags out in the corner, you'll make mice. So that's what they were teaching for a couple thousand years, and Louis Pasteur, he made some experiments and says, no, life only comes from life. It does not come from non-life. So they got rid of spontaneous generation, but they need something for life to get going, for evolution to work. So they call it abiogenesis, which means life doesn't come from non-life, but it did this one time. And it made the single living cell that turned into everything, all the plants and animals and people that have ever lived. And I don't have enough faith to believe that one. But that's what they're doing. So that paradigm shift is crumbling too. And Ignaz Semmelweis, he was persecuted for telling the truth. You know what truth he told? Hey guys, we need to wash our hands after we do an autopsy. We have to wash our hands before we deliver babies. We have to wash our hands before we do surgeries. And he was ridiculed and rejected by the people because consensus was, no, you don't have to do that. But he saw how the babies died more in this wing of the hospital than in that wing. And in this wing, it was the doctors delivering them, and in that wing, it was the nurses. What was different? The doctors did autopsies before they went up to deliver the babies. And he says, no, we got to wash our hands. So he never did get the credit. He was speaking the truth, but the people around it offended them because, hey, if he's right, we had a hand in killing a bunch of people. And that cognitive dissonance would not allow them to go there. So science progresses one funeral at a time. And we're seeing it in our lifetime. And even the death of George Washington, they thought if you're sick, it's because you got bad blood. If you bleed you on this side, we got to bleed the other side or you're going to be out of balance. They bled him 4 times, took 32 pints out, and he died. And his last words were, doctors, I'm dying, but I'm not afraid to die. And that's what we need to be. We need to stop fearing death. It's just a stepping stone to eternity if we put our faith in Christ. And my aunt, she got diagnosed with cancer in January, and she was dead by June. But she had this ABCD. A, she was going to choose a good attitude. That's what she could do. No matter what she was going through, she was going to choose an attitude, good attitude. B, she was going to be brave. Whatever came to her, she was going to put it in God's hand and just be brave and have courage. And then D was dignity. She was going to die with dignity. And that's what I think we need to do. Get to that point where we don't have to fear death. They're using fear to control us a lot. So we just have to not fear death, put it in God's hand, and do what's right. Do what's right and risk the consequences, as Bob Enyart would say. And then J. Harlan Brents, he was the guy that figured out the scablands. It was a breached glacier dam. A glacier lake came flowing through there and wiped it all out. But again, he was ridiculed also. Because all that was allowed, the only consensus that was allowed was uniformitarianism. You can only use present processes to explain everything. And that was I got a slide of a grade school, or 8th grade earth science. It says uniformitarianism is the foundation for geology. And then I've got the geology or earth science textbook from college, and they don't even mention uniformitarianism. So that mindset crumbled, and thanks to people, and decades later, he finally got the credit. Okay, and he would actually live to get it. So now catastrophic events in our planet's history are now mainstream. So there's these paradigms. When there's lies, they can't stand. They're going to crumble, and we're living in the midst of it. And you might have seen, Henry Morris. He was the founder of the modern creation movement with his Genesis Flood book. He explained it from a biblical perspective. And Ken Ham, he's growing up. He's over in Australia, and he's being taught evolution. And he goes to his dad. They're teaching evolution. What should I do? And he says, believe the Bible. Don't believe that. Yeah, but where's the evidence? He goes, I don't know, but believe the Bible. Man's wrong. And then Henry Morris wrote his Genesis Flood book, and Ken Ham got the answers he needed, and the rest is history. He wanted to build an ark or build a museum, but he was called to be a missionary to America. So he came here, which is a sad commentary because we need to start talking to our friends, our relatives, our neighbors, make sure they know about Jesus. And so what he did for geology, I believe Randy Galuza is doing for biology. Because there's things that are happening in biology that they cannot explain with their old paradigm. And their paradigm evolution is crumbling. And who's heard of Randy Galuza? Dr. Randy Galuza? Okay. I just love listening to him. I've heard him speak several times live. Gotten to speak to him personally a couple of times. He's just the best. I mean, he's going to go where the truth leads. Doesn't matter what feathers he ruffles. But he's the president of ICR right now, and I really have a lot of respect for him. But before that, he was an engineer. And then he became a medical doctor, got trained at Harvard, got his master's at Harvard. So he's about as sharp as they come. And he says such powerful things, and he says them so gently. I don't know how he does it. It's the perfect mix of strength and humility. And he is really, really good. And what he's doing, he'll talk about a space shuttle. Do they just throw it up there and say, hey guys, figure it out when you're up there? No. They have every solution to every challenge up there built into the spaceship before they send it up. And there's a lot of different things that thing's got to go through. It's got to have the lift off, and then the cold of outer space, and then the heat of the reentry, and then the landing. Those are all built into the system. And what he's saying is, you know what, God did that with us. And this is some of his, there's articles, Engineering Principles. This is from ICR. They are really doing a good job on this. And I like to show a lot of slides because I'm not a scientist, I'm not a teacher, I'm not a professor. I'm a megaphone, okay? I just like to let everybody know what the really smart guys are saying. So this is what they're saying in those articles, and I think Randy Galuza wrote these. He says, he wants scientists to reverse engineer biological systems, and that'll continuously point to God. They got this biomimicry where they look at what God made, like Velcro. They get Velcro from the cockleburr. They look at all these things God's designed, and then they try and imitate it. And it's like, well, it's obviously designed. Why do you say it came together by chance, random processes? And when I'm at St. Cloud State and I'm talking to a student and they don't believe in God, and sometimes they'll say, okay, without God, how did life begin? And they can't explain it. Or else it's like, okay, you don't believe in God. Do you think that building got put together by chance? This room right here. Just an explosion, chance, random, natural processes put this building together. And they say no. And I say, you're right. It'd be absurd to think the building got put together without a builder. And I said, how much more absurd is it to think that your body got put together without a builder? Because your body's a whole lot more complex than that building. So we try and help them see that, and I try and ask questions, because questions that aren't answered properly, they don't go away. And my prayer is it wakes them up in the middle of the night, so they try and look for the real answers. Okay, and Dr. Galuza says, people can clearly identify workmanship. Intuitively, we recognize the distinctive features of engineered craftsmanship in creatures as a clear sign of God's agency, leaving them without excuse when they don't acknowledge Him as their creator. That's right, Romans 1, without excuse. Without excuse. We are designed. His handiwork is everywhere. Therefore, creationists should confidently use engineering-based frameworks to explain biology. That's right. We don't have to back up to the evolutionists. We have the truth. And we can just ask them a couple of questions. A kindergartner can stump the most brilliant atheist by just asking, where did matter come from? How did life begin? The atheist can't answer that. But, was it Greg Collins? He was at Ohio State, and he asked these physicists, and he asked them, what's the difference between science and science fiction? And they couldn't answer it. See, my perspective is science is observable, testable, repeatable, falsifiable, the scientific method type of science. But yet they're physicists, and they're talking about Boltzmann brains and multiverses and big bangs, and none of that's testable. See, we both have faith, and I don't have enough faith to think that nothing exploded and turned into everything. And so again, then there's engineered principles underlying. Okay, this is the new paradigm for how we should look at biology right now. Engineering principles underlying how human-designed things self-adjust to changing environments are the most accurate way to explain how organisms adapt themselves to such changes. So they're going to make predictive, regulative types of changes. See, the evolutionists, they think it's the environment that's working on the creatures to make it better and adapt. And they have Mother Nature and Father Time. That's how we got here, which is a logical fallacy. Those are not persons. They're personifying stuff that aren't, reification. And it's undirected trial and error, hit and miss, chance random processes. That's what the tagline was of one of our flyers. And I think it's over there. Explore with open minds, not limited to theories of blind chance and random collisions of atoms. Yeah, open up your mind. And then gradual changes is what they have. And if I'm talking to an evolutionist, sometimes I'll ask them, so you're an evolutionist, okay? And yeah. Well, what denomination of evolution are you? Are you a Darwinist? Are you a gradualist like Darwin, where it's all gradual? Or, there wasn't any evidence for that. Or are you a hopeful monsterist like Goldschmidt? He said that the first birds came from a reptile egg. So he was too liberal and Darwin was too conservative. So then Gould, he comes up with the moderate position called punctuated equilibrium. It didn't happen all at once, but it happened faster, and the fossil record didn't get it. So yeah, they have their different denominations too. And so I like to help point that out to them. But what's really happening? The creature has stuff designed into it. It's actively sensing the environment and making the appropriate changes that are predictable, repeatable, reversible. And Eric Hovind, he interviewed Dr. Galuza on creationtoday.com. Has anybody ever seen that show? creationtoday.com. He's got some of the really neat interviews there, so I encourage you to check it out. I did hear Dr. Galuza speak at our Twin Cities Creation Club, and this was in 2017, so 6 years ago. I got out of that talk and I was so excited what I learned there, because I thought this is the straw that breaks the evolution's back, because he showed these blind cavefish. There's 120 some species of fish that don't have eyes and they don't have pigment. Plus there's salamanders, crustaceans like crayfish and shrimp, and insects. No eyes, no pigment, but their sense of smell and touch is highly developed. So they've adapted to the cave. And so what's the evolutionary story? Its eyes lost its fish to evolution. Evolution gets the credit for adapting to the cave. And it says natural selection would favor individuals with reduced visual capacity. And so what they're saying is, okay, somehow the fish this is the evolutionary story. Somehow the fish got trapped in the cave. And eyes aren't a benefit in a cave because they could get scratched, they use up oxygen, waste it. And so just countless generations go by, and then all of a sudden there was a fish that had a mutation, didn't have eyes. And he could survive just a little bit better than everyone else. And his offspring could survive just a little bit better than everyone else. And countless generations go by, and pretty soon they're all descendants of that one mutated fish. That's the evolutionary story. All right? And so you're going to hear stuff in the evolutionary literature. Countless generations, mutations, loss of information, natural selection, all descended from that mutated fish. All right? But you're also going to see that in creation journals too. Because and Randy Galuza said he's got so much class. I could have showed you an example and blasted a creation organization. I had the slides. I'm not going to. Because what Randy Galuza said, he looked back at his own ICR's explanation. And he said, and we give the credit to natural selection. And as creationists, we say, yeah, there's lots of information that can be beneficial, but where did the good information come from? But we're still using the secular view of natural selection as the change agent. We're just taking that secular view and we're putting this cross on it, kind of like what we did with plate tectonics. That's a secular view. They sped it up to fit it into the Bible. And it's like, no, let's take a look at another perspective. And I heard Dr. Galuza speak this year and a couple of years ago at Harris, Minnesota. I didn't even know where it was. It was an hour away. But he went back there because his pastor invited him. His pastor from college invited him. So just a super nice guy. And he comes in there and he's given the blind cavefish talk. And he quotes this study from Science, Cryptic Variation in Morphological Evolution, Loss of Eyes in Cavefish. This is Science, and I think it's 2015. Let's see, 2013, I can't read it. Anyhow, let's see, 2013, okay. And he says, and he quotes, I quote him, this fish can go from sighted fish to a blind fish in how many generations? What do you think? You think it's one, you think it's 5, think it's 10, think it's 100? He said in a single generation, in one generation, it goes from eyes with no eyes and pigment to no eyes and no pigment. And these changes, and he's seeing these, and he said he has a file with about 200 papers in it. There's, journals that they talk of, they use these words, regulated, rapid, repeatable, reversible, targeted, predictable. That's not evolution. Evolution is chance random processes, and they're always shocked because of this. And now you're starting to see that stuff in the evolution and the creation. They're both there in one generation. One generation. So what's happening? the embryo, as it's developing, is sensing the environment it's in, and it's clicking on and off what it needs. And it clicks off the eyes and the pigment if it doesn't need it. So in one generation, that's all built in. Evolutionists cannot explain it. And I'll show you a website that they're putting together to try to explain it. And I saw this in creation.com. New eyes for blind cavefish, ? They took a blind cavefish and they put some lenses on it. And within 2 months, they had a large restored eye with distinct pupil, cornea, and iris. In addition, the retina of the restored eye showed rod photoreceptor cells. That's not chance random processes. That's a creature figuring out where he is and what he can do with it. He's getting better. And so when I heard Dr. Gluza speak 6 years ago, it was Q&A time, and I asked, what happens to the blind cavefish when they put them back into the light? And he said, I don't know, I haven't seen any studies on that. And I was doing a study for another talk, and I stumbled across this: blind cavefish see the light. This is from Nature. Offspring that can see. Isn't that interesting? And this is from CBC. Scientists restore sight to blind fish. Well, how long does this take? Restoration of the ability to see comes in a single generation. And National Geographic, they talk about it. Blind cavefish produce sighted offspring. It's a miracle. Blind cavefish, despite having adapted to their lightless environment for more than 1 million years. Okay, there's their faith being exposed. That's not a fact. That is a interpretation of a fact, and they mix them together. So again, in science, you have to separate the fuzzy words, the facts, from the fiction, and millions of years is fiction. When I was out in Virginia, I had a table at a community college, and the guy who taught biology there said that he has his students have a journal, and whenever they find fuzzy words like somehow, might have, could have, probably, write down those words. So then the students know when they're being taught science and when they're being taught fiction. And so it says it's a miracle, okay, millions of years, can produce sighted offspring in just a single generation. So they can go from eyes and pigment to no eyes and no pigment and back to eyes and pigment again in just one generation. So it's incredibly complex. God's designed the solutions to the challenges built into us. And then Creation Research Quarterly, they're jumping on the bandwagon. And they say this rapid, repeatable, and complex organism-wide system adaptations make little sense in the context of Darwinian evolution involving mutation and natural selection. That's absolutely true. It makes no sense. They cannot explain it, and they know it. It's going to fall apart. It's just a matter of time. However, the data fit perfectly with the model of engineered, organism-driven systems of adaptation built into creatures by the Creator that enable them to continuously track and appropriately adjust to specific environmental changes. That's right. In one generation, they can have what they need. And this is why ICR's continuous environmental tracking, that's what they call this, continuous environmental tracking. 6 years ago, I said, we're going to have to figure out a new word for this, but we didn't figure one out. So it's continuous environmental tracking model of adaptation is so liberating. It's so liberating. It's the first engineered-based, organism-focused model that interprets altered genetic sequences as purposeful modifications and not just broken genes, and as regulated changes rather than random mutations. And so this is it. This is cutting-edge biology. This is what all the evidence is pointing to. And it says ICR's experiments on blind cavefish are confirming our pro-design assumptions. And I saw Brian Young give a talk like this, and he said, yeah, that's the same fish. ICR, they took a blind cavefish and they put it in the light, and after 30 days it's got pigment. So it's sensing what it needs, it makes the appropriate changes. And 6 years ago, Dr. Gluza talked about seagulls. They can live in the sea because they have these salt gland by their forehead, and they can take the salt out of the water and sneeze the salt out. But if they go inland when it's freshwater fish, that gland just kind of goes away. And then if they go back to the salt, then it kind of forms again. And he had all these examples, and we'll show you a couple of them. And again, he's an engineer, engineering principles. Evaluate biological organisms using the same engineering principles found in man-made devices. So this is a little repetitive, but repetition is good, so we can really get a good grasp of this. So continuous environmental tracking, what do we need? Input sensors to gather data from surroundings, internal programming that responds to the input data, and then output actuators to execute responses. So input, so sensors, programming, and output. And that's what we're finding in a lot of these creatures, and they're just stunned. We find it in finches, carp, mice, reptiles, and fish. And they don't find it in the, I'll read the python one, a study of over 1,000 pythons and boas. Who'd like to do that study? Not me. Demonstrated that they express similar traits to adapt to their environment with no recorded mutations. So it's sensing the environment and making the appropriate changes, and I'm going to jump into that. And they've got a bunch of these different articles. Go into icr.org and search engineered adaptability. There's probably a dozen articles, and I'll just give you some of the highlights. Again, internal programming, solving the problems, detective, they got the sensors, and then have the appropriate responses. And it's very sophisticated. Sophistication and complexity are different. You could write a huge computer program that's very complex that does one thing. Or you could write a very sophisticated computer program that's very short that does 10 things. See, complexity and sophistication, what's in our DNA, in the creature's DNA, is so sophisticated. And when we start messing with the DNA, like we're going to talk about in a little bit, we don't know what's going to happen. We really don't. Because the DNA, it's got a message forward, it got a message backwards, it's got different time thing. It's incredibly, I think John Sanford, he does a talk on creationtoday.org, which would be really good. It's like it's just so massively complex. And engineered adaptability. Creatures' adaptability. This is my favorite part of the whole talk. They take guinea pigs, and they raise them in where it's 86 degrees on the floor. Okay, so it's kind of hot by their little feet. And they have them there for 2 months. And that's about how long it takes for the sperm cycle to develop. And then they mate them with a female that's not part of the experiment. Then the pups, they sacrifice them right away. I mean, it's just, I don't know, science just seems so cruel. I mean, is this what God really wants us doing with his creatures? But this is what they learned when they did that. The pups, they were very well, that's just a bunch of fancy words of saying they were more adapted to live in the heat. So that it could get passed on. When they were sensing it, they passed on this information to the next generation. And it's 13 of the 19 genes in the promoter region and 12 additional genes known to be associated with physiological temperature regulation were modified. And it could be transmitted to the second generation. Now that's incredibly sophisticated. And this is the secular journal that they're referring to, New Scientists. Guinea pigs beat climate change by tweaking their own DNA. Yeah, how do they do that? Mammals have been seen responding to higher temperatures by altering chemical structures in their DNA. So God's designed that into us. We're supposed to inhabit the world, inhabit the earth. The earth was made to be inhabited, and there's cold, and there's hot, and there's wet, and he's put all these solutions into these different creatures. And this is, and then it says, evidence for epigenetic heat response in corals, fruit flies, chickens, and fish have been observed. Okay, and so this is system-wise, it seems, like they can turn on and off. Here's one. How temperature determines sex in alligators. So they say if they're incubated at 91 degrees, they produce mainly males. And if it's incubated at 86 degrees, it's mainly females. And the evolutionists say, see, look at the environment. The environment is making the changes on these animals. Environment's getting the glory. And Randy Galusa says, no, it's not the environment. There's sensors that are determining what the temp is and then determine the sex. And they found those sensors in 2015. And this is Croatian carp. Yeah, they've done studies on fish, where if there's no predator, they'll lay a few eggs and then they'll take a long time to develop. But if there's a predator, then they lay a whole bunch of eggs and they develop very rapidly. Okay, and now this Croatian carp, the top fish, that's when there's no predator. And there could even be a predator, but it's not eating Croatian carp. It could be eating sunfish or perch or crappies, and it's going to stay like that. But as soon as it eats a Croatian carp, And that stuff goes through the system. Then it changes. That bottom fish is the same fish. It just morphs itself, changes its body structure to make it harder to eat. It's quicker to turn, it's harder to eat when it's got that shape. But it doesn't do that until there's a need to do that. And this is the study that it's from the Royal Society. Predator-induced morphology enhances escape locomotion in Croatian carp. And it says, in Croatian carp, a deep body is induced by the presence of pike. Okay, so this is all built in. That's not chance random processes that they're talking about. And then ant mimicry evolved many times in beetles. And it says that at least a dozen times in beetle species that have only distantly related. So what do? They change their shape to look like an ant, like the rove beetle. If there's army ants around, it'll change its shape so it'll look really close like an ant. So it'll look like an ant, it'll smell like an ant, it'll act like an ant, and then it'll go in the ant hole. And then it'll have a buffet on the eggs. It'll be like 2 for you, 1 for me, 2 for you, 1 for me, and they do that with termites too. It's like, how in the world did that happen? By chance, random processes. And then Dr. Galuza talked about these bluehead race fish switch from female to male in just 20 days. So typically there's a blue race fish, that's the male, and then there's about a dozen female ones that are yellow. And if you take the blue one out of there, it causes some stress. And typically the biggest female, the individuals become dominant in this group, the genes associated with female hormones shut down in a day or two and their colors begin to change. And then in just 8 to 10 days, the mature ovaries are transformed into testes, and the fish can mate with females and sire offspring. How does that happen? By chance random processes. God's designed it into the creatures to deal with that situation. And by the way, he designed it into those fish, not into humans. You know, we're here. And God made you a guy, he made you a guy. Every cell in your body says you're a guy. If God made you a girl, he made you a girl. Every cell in your body says you're a girl. And we have a Christian school at our church, and the creation, it's a small one, and at the kindergarten and the preschool teachers, they really stress, she told me, I really stress creation, and God made you a boy, or God made you a girl. He didn't make a mistake. Because some of those kids are going to go into the government schools, and they're going to be taught something different. So she wants them to get solid in that. All right, so that's where we're living today. Okay, baby mice can inherit fear of certain smells from their parents. So this was, Dr. Galuza talked about this one too, where they'll take a cherry blossom scent and they'll spray it on the mice and then they'll zap them. And they'll spray them and zap them, spray them and zap them, spray them and zap them. And again, is that what we should be doing with God's creatures? You know, it just seems to me like there's way too much tax money out there. But they spray them and zap them, spray them and zap them. And what do they find? That these baby mice, again, they did the same thing. They made them with a female. That's not part of the experiment. And they sacrifice the pups as soon as they're born. They haven't smelled anything. And yet their olfactory nerves are very highly developed, especially to that cherry scent. So somehow that stress in the parent got passed on in the sperm. Somehow it made those changes. And again, this is not chance random processes. This is very regulated. And and then we have similar features. You know, you got these different creatures, but they adapt the same way to different environments. And Dr. Galuza, he talked about this study too. It's a surprising phenomenon for an evolutionist. Spiders on Hawaii reveal surprising phenomena because they're stuck in this materialistic worldview. They don't allow for a designer. And chance random processes, they can't explain it. And what happened here? All 14 species of stick spiders spread throughout the 8 Hawaiian islands evolved only 3 different colors, red and yellow, black, and matte white. And what they do is they'll adapt to the sand and be white. If they're in the woods, they'll adapt to the different colors. And there's a word. The different species of spiders are ecomorphs, a word used to describe animals that look the same and live in the same environment, but aren't closely related. And it goes on to say that they have a programmed switch in their DNA that allows them to evolve quickly. That's not chance random processes. That's not gradual that evolutionists that our kids are being taught. So let's take a look at those boas and pythons. Any snake people in here? No snake people. Anybody know the difference between boas and... I just leave. There it is, I'm gone. That's all I need to know. But pythons, they lay eggs, where boas, they have live birth. Pythons are tropical. That's why we get the Burmese pythons in the Florida Everglades wreaking havoc, or at least it used to be. I'm not sure if they got that fixed or not. I think they were putting collars on the males so they could track where the males were, or the females where the nest were. The pythons can be a little bit bigger, and they can both get bigger than me. They can be 200 pounds. And pythons are a little bit more aggressive. Okay, but what are the similarities? It goes on to say that 80% of the species show that tree-dwelling python boas look much more like each other than either snake look like one of its own kind living underground. So that's what the tree. If they live in the trees, they're green. And they'll look, the python in the tree looks more like the boa in the tree than it does the python anywhere else. So it's adapting. Some trees, and then land and water and underground. They can adapt to those. Anybody ever see those National Geographic? They got the underground pythons or boas, I'm not sure which it is. But they'll have people, they'll crawl into them. They'll have people holding onto their feet to pull them out. It's like, I'm not sure if they're trying to catch them and get their skin or what. But that's courage in my book. But then we have epigenetics, which is modification of gene expression rather than alternation of the genetic code itself. So, and that's what happens. The genes switch on and off, depending on the environment they're in. And that's what happened with Darwin's finches. You remember the beaks get big or the beaks get small. He thought, well, that's proof of evolution. No, they're still birds. And it can go from big beak to small beak in 2 years, and it can go back again in 2 years. So it's just the epigenetic mechanisms play a role in regulating expression of genes in this pathway for the beak shape. So it's not chance random processes. And it's to rapid reflex and sudden change to conditions. These self-adjusting, epigenetic mechanisms enable populations to rapidly flex with suddenly changed conditions. These self-adjustments are so regulated and precise, they've actually been described as predictable. Again, that's not chance random evolution, and it's bothering them. And it's really bothering them. The clear resemblance of biological function to sophisticated engineering cannot be ignored, even by evolutionary naturalists. In 2016, an international conference dedicated to engineering biology was held at the University of Pittsburgh. It aimed to characterize a new engineering paradigm. See, their old paradigm is collapsing. And they don't want to put God there, so they got to figure out a new paradigm. Because the old paradigm that they've been pounding down kids' throats for decades is false, and it's falling apart. So they want a new engineering paradigm in biology that emphasizes how engineered-based perspective of biology contrasts with established biological thinking. And it goes on to say this, and it says the fields such as integrative systems biology, biomedical engineering, and synthetic biology, we're going to talk about that, appear to have more in common with engineered approach than with the traditional biological ones, like evolution. Right? Evolution is falling apart. It's on its last legs. It's only a matter of time. It would have been gone 100 years ago, but they don't have anything to replace it with besides God. And so they just keep propping it up, and it's just falling apart. And this is their website, thethirdwayofelution.com. This is their evolutionary website, and it says they want other mechanisms are essential for a comprehensive understanding of evolutionary processes, because they can't explain any of those examples with their old paradigm. And they want alternative ideas of evolutionary process. It's like, I've got one. How about intelligent design? How about God? Yeah, but they don't want that. All right, evolutionary materialism begins with the belief that nature somehow created itself. They begin with, and that's one of the talks that I gave at that state college in Florida. It's think outside the box. Think outside the materialistic box. Because you'll never find the designer if you stay in there, and it's clearly designed. And I said, it's like if I had a chest of gold, and I hid it, and I said, you can have $1 million if you find that chest of gold, but you can only look inside this building. And then I hide it outside. They'll never find it. They might even be tripping over it on their way from their car, but it's like, oh, it's not here, it's got to be in there. They keep thinking inside the box, and that's why we have to enjoy the freedom to think outside the intolerant dogma that they're forced to think in. Okay, this belief is reflected in their approach to biological research, and that's true. They think that the things are evolving. They can do directed evolution. Watch out for those words. Directed evolution. They invoke a mystical environmental volition to explain cause, displaces everything engineers know about design. So it just does not work from their paradigm, but they will not give God the glory. So let's just wrap this up and review real quickly. Continuous environmental tracking. I believe this will be the straw that breaks evolution's back. But they'll probably just change it, like when spontaneous generation fell apart, they just replaced it with abiogenesis. So when their evolution falls apart, they probably think of, well, it's the multiverse evolution or whatever. It just happened here. I don't know. They'll think of something. So that's God's amazing design. All right, let's take a look at man's devious plans and artificial intelligence. And I use Yuval Harari. He's like the poster child. This is a screenshot of his website last week. This is the first thing you'll see. You go into ynharari.com and you'll see history began when humans invented gods and will end when humans become gods. And if you want to see more of his clips, you go into Prepare for the Battle in my Education, Not Indoctrination Rumble channel. And I show you a whole bunch of his clips saying how Jesus is fake news, and we're getting divine powers of destruction and creation. And this is what really changed my life. All right, this is a pivotal point in my life. A was the gospel, B was creation, and C was seeing this guy. The other one, Walt Brown, hydroplate theory. And then hearing this guy. This is Yuval Harari. He's got best-selling author, professor of history at Hebrew University in Israel, Jerusalem. And he's speaking at the World Economic Forum. And he just got done talking about how the commodity of the past used to be cars and textiles and stuff, but the commodity of the future is going to be bodies and brains. We're going to figure out how to do this. And what does he think? And this, keep in mind, the most powerful people in the world are listening to this.
So how exactly will the future masters of the planet look like? This will be decided by the people who own the data. Those who control the data control the future, not just of humanity, but the future of life itself. Because today, data is the most important asset in the world. In ancient times, land was the most important asset. And if too much land became concentrated in too few hands, humanity split into aristocrats and commoners. Then in the modern age, in the last 2 centuries, machinery replaced land as the most important asset. And if too many of the machines became concentrated in too few hands, humanity split into classes, into capitalists and proletariat. Now data is replacing machinery as the most important asset. And if too much of the data becomes concentrated in too few hands, humanity will split not into classes, it will split into species, into different species.
Yeah, so that's where, when you reject God in the Bible, that's where your mindset can go. You know, they think they're God. They're going to want to be God. And I just show you that to kind of give you a backdrop to artificial intelligence. This is where they're steering the conversation. This is what they're talking about. And when you believe in evolution, well, you know, why not break off from the humans like we broke off from the chimps? You know, that's what they're talking about. And that's why this creation battle is so important. You know, you just look around the world and it's such a mess. You ever wonder that? Well, it's because there's a battle raging between God's truth and Satan's lies. You know, and the ground zero for that is what you're doing here: creation versus evolution. This is the battle, and that's the consequence of losing the battle. And Glenn Collins, he gave a talk at ours, and he did a really good talk on AI. I'll just give you the highlights of what he covered. I would recommend that you go in and listen to him and his interview. And he refers to Yuval Harari, and how Yuval has said that AI is an important stepping stone for transhumanism. So that's what they see. And AI has hacked the operating system of human civilization. He says people are now hackable animals. And that's what motivated me probably a year and a half ago. I heard him speak, and it's like, we got to get this message out. There's people that do not have good plans. But going back to AI, ChatGPT. Who's ever used ChatGPT? Anybody? Okay. Yeah, I'm staying away from it. But I've heard about it. You know, it started November 30th of last year, and it enables users to refine and steer conversations toward a desired length, format, and style. And so it's very good at syntax. I mean, even like your email, it can start predicting the words. It's a predictive tool. And it's really good at English and syntax and grammar. It's really good at that. But it can't think. Okay, and what's the fastest growing software, and 100 million viewers already, and grew to be 29 billion. But it could enable plagiarism and misinformation. And even like your search engine, you start typing something in, it'll fill in the blank. And I did a talk a few years ago, and you can see this on my talk. It was called, "Are You Being Brainwashed?" And I typed in on Google, it's like, Hillary Clinton is, and it filled in the best candidate, great, da-da-da. You do that on Bing or Yahoo or a different one. Hillary is a witch, or all this just terrible stuff. But so the search engine can direct what you see. And I did this because I heard that there was, the NATO commander had his pronouns, and I wanted to see that. So I typed it in on NATO commander pronouns. I typed it in on Chrome, didn't find anything. Typed it in on Safari, didn't find anything. And then I typed it in on Brave. And this was the first thing. It was NATO Gender Inclusive Language Manual. It's like right there. So your search engine can really determine what you learn and what's being censored and what's not. So some of the highlights of his talk, he says, today's artificial intelligence is not intelligence. Right now, a lot of people are excited about the large language models, LLMs, and there could be, they're starting to use that more in science. But they are a product of AI, but they are not AI. At its core today, AI is incapable of comprehension, knowledge, thought, or intelligence. It's just a marketing gimmick. Jump on board is what he's... And there's one problem. It isn't intelligent at any level, and corporations aren't interested in correcting the public's misconception. And he's quoting an editor from the Review Geek. And then and compare it to our brain. Stanford did a study. We got roughly 200 billion neurons in our brain, all these brain cells. And each one is connected to about 1,000 other connections. So we got 10 to the 15th power of connections in our brain. Our brain is so marvelous. And I'm going to show you something at the end. It's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And even like if you have half a brain, it'll compensate. I read this book, what was it called? It was by Pearl Bailey or something like that. And but there was, in that book, there was a guy who had a stroke, just terrible stroke. They said he'll never recover. And his son, we'll see about that. And he had to learn everything from scratch. He had to learn to walk. He had to learn, body control and language. He had to learn it all over. But then he got to live a normal life, got married. And then when he died, his son said, I'd like to do an autopsy on his brain. I'd like to see what the brain stem, how much of that he could use. And it was like 3%. So the 3% of the brain could be taught to do that. The brain is incredibly, incredibly complex. And even if you got half a brain, the eyes will go, like the optic nerves, it'll go from one, they're supposed to go to the opposite sides, but they don't. They'll both go to that one side. It's just incredible. If you look into, that was on creation.com, and we might touch on that just a little bit. But compare the brain to the AI machines. They got massive warehouses. They got many megawatts. Oh, and our brain, it runs on 23 watts. It's an incredible design. And then there's data annotation. He says, behind even the most impressive AI systems are people. Huge numbers of people labeling data to train it and clarify data when it gets confused. They say, yeah, AI will get rid of all these workers. Well, they just hired millions of them over in Nepal and Nigeria. And it's called data annotation or data curation, where they're trying to make it, they're coaching it how to recognize different patterns. And to put it another way, ChatGPT seems so human because it was trained on human writing, is mimicking human writing, and gets rated feedback from humans who are rating how well it was mimicking humans. And sometimes they'll get a question and it can't answer it, and it'll melt down. They call it a hallucination. Like one time a guy wrote in or asked ChatGPT could you write a Dr. Seuss praising Donald Trump? and it wouldn't do it. It would do it for Biden, but it wouldn't do it for Trump. Another person typed in, do vaccines cause autism? And it responded, yes they do, no they don't, yes they do, no they don't, yes they do. The official position is that they don't, is how they did that. Okay, maybe this happens, and they sound so authoritative. Maybe this happens to align with the truth, but it also can result in mimicking the confident style and expert jargon of the accurate text while writing some things that are totally wrong. And he quotes, he said that AI wrote a legal brief, and it cited cases that never existed. It just made up the cases and the sources, so we have to watch out for this stuff with AI. And it was Yuval Harari, he says, you should be notified if you're speaking with a bot, an AI. He says that should be something you should know, but who knows if it's going to happen. And this is Stephen Hawking, and he said, we need to be sensitive to the possibility that there are hidden assumptions and biases in data, and therefore in the systems built from that data. That's right, there's a whole bunch of biases, like they wouldn't write it about Trump, they would about Biden. So it's programming. They'll have these algorithms that can steer the conversation a certain way. But it can be real helpful. You know, the Greek Room, this is a project that uses AI to improve and speed up Bible translation. Well, that's a good thing if you have good interpreters, good programmers. Or I could see Satan corrupting the gospel there real easy, and get people to believe a false gospel and throw a bunch of things that aren't true into it. And at USC, it uses AI to help translate Bible into very rare languages. Oh, and by the way, which text are they translating? That's key in this Bible translation thing. What text are you translating? And there's 7,000 languages, and there's about 6,000 more that need a Bible. And they do need a Bible. I agree with that. But are there biases built into it? Because you can have an AI you can text with Jesus. Again, what are the answers? What are the questions that they're going to get? Which Bible are they using? Maybe they're using the Queen James Bible. Right? Anybody heard of that? The Queen James Bible. And they openly declared the bias in mind to appeal to the homosexual audience. Well, how are you going to do that? You're going to edit out all the references to homosexuality. And so they can build these biases into whatever coming out of AI. And let's hear Yuval. To be fair, he talks about we need these biosensors so we can tell what's happening under the skin. And he talks about that. We need to be tracked under the skin, but we need these biosensors. And once those get developed, listen to what he says.
You can create algorithms that know me better than I know myself. And humans really don't know themselves very well. This is why algorithms have a real chance of getting to know ourselves better. We don't really know ourselves. To give an example, when I was 21, I finally realized that I was gay after living for several years in denial. And this is not exceptional. A lot of gay men live in denial for many years. They don't know something very important about themselves. Now imagine the situation in 10 or 20 years when an algorithm can tell any teenager exactly where he or she is on the gay-straight spectrum.
Yeah. Any teenager, the computer will tell you what you are. Yeah, maybe they aren't going to wait till they're teenagers. Maybe they'll start doing it in kindergarten, like what they're teaching kids nowadays. They're going to school and they're getting so confused. Well, just imagine, the computer AI says you're this. And what do you think they're going to be programmed to be? And so there's some very dangerous ideas. And so, again, we have to be aware of this. It's a tool. AI is a tool. It can be used for good or it can be used for evil. And so we have to be very, very, very cautious about believing anything AI says. And, I was speaking, in Nebraska one time. And they were telling about these kids that identify as cats. They want kitty litter. And then in a small town, Holding Ford, Minnesota, they have that too. And it's like, man, if I was the superintendent, I'd say, we don't educate cats here. Get in the barn, catch a mouse. You want to be a cat? We'll treat you like a cat. But there's just so much confusion. And my uncle, he's 85, and 2 years ago I heard him say, I'm glad I'm old. And I'd never heard anybody say that. I said, why do you say that? He says, because I'd hate to grow up in this world. It's so confusing. And then last year I heard somebody say that. This year I heard 3 people say that. And so what kind of world are we leaving to the next generation? We need to get them the truth of creation in the Bible. Okay, and AI is the machine learning dependent on people as much as math. Facebook's facial recognition software asks people to label their photos to improve accuracy. And then you do those terms and conditions thing, you just check it without reading it. Well, they're going to have access to a lot of your text, your music, your photos, to help train the products. And yeah, it's just really, they have so much data on us. I mean, when I was at the booth at that fair for 5 days, my booth was next to a guy who they were the roof gutters, the gutter helmets, And so we were there. I never did talk to him about his business, but I talked to him a little bit. But we're right next to each other. And then I'm starting to get these things on my Facebook page about these gutter guards, the rain gutters. And we never talked about it. So they're tracking where I am, and they know who's around me, and they're trying to market things based on that. So massive increase in machine automation, yet voice, text, and image recognition. And this is where we really have to watch out for scammers. Because it doesn't take much of your voice for them to mimic your voice. And you could get a call from your grandson saying, I'm in a big bunch of trouble, I need money now. Okay? Or it could even be a video of them. We have to watch out for these deep fakes. This is from Mark Dice. Anybody ever heard of Mark Dice on YouTube? He's got an interesting perspective on news. But he talks about these deep fakes. He says someday we're never going to be able to tell the difference. Okay, this is Biden. Okay?
Joe Biden's saying terrible things about transgender people.
All the validation you get is two-faced and half-hearted. Behind your back, people mock you. Your parents are disgusted and ashamed of you. Your friends laugh at your ghoulish appearance behind closed doors. Men are utterly repulsed by you. Thousands of years of evolution have allowed men to sniff out frauds with incredible efficiency.
Now, can you tell if that was fake? He never said it, but boy, does that look real. And there's this one, I don't know if this is a fake or not. The words, the mouth doesn't quite match. But yet, what she's saying could be, this is what the World Economic is. It wouldn't surprise me if it's real.
We need to eat less meat. We need to stop land being used for cattle and growing grain for the billions of animals that we keep in our intensive farms. And then finally, we cannot hide away from human population growth. Because, it underlies so many of the other problems. All these things we talk about wouldn't be a problem if there was the size of population that there was 500 years ago.
500 years ago, because there's a lot of people talking about reducing population. So what she is saying, that could be what it wouldn't surprise me if the higher ups are saying it, but is it fake? I don't know. That's the hard thing about right now. It's like, is it true or not? But you just go into their websites, and their websites clearly talk about that. You'll own nothing and be happy. And if you want to see more about that stuff, I give one, Exposing Tyranny. Go into Education, Not Indoctrination. If you want to see what the World Economic Forum, what's in their websites, their videos, there is a powerful group of people that think there are too many of us. And yet they take their private jets to Davos every year. It's like, well, my goal... full disclosure here, my goal is to make sure my carbon footprint is smaller than Al Gore's. So as long as I'm smaller than Al Gore's, I've got nothing to worry about, I hope. So anyhow, and extropians and immortality. Entropy is things fall apart. Extropy is things get better. That's what they're talking about here. It seeks to direct human evolution, hoping to eliminate disease, suffering, and even death. That's what they're going to try and get us in that cage. And it means this might mean genetic modification, or perhaps dispersing with the body entirely and uploading minds into supercomputers. So that's what they're talking about. This is not an honest conversation. People think it is about technology, but it's really about religion. People turning to metaphysics to cope with the human condition. So that's what they're trying to do. They're putting all their faith in AI and they want to live forever. They want to be gods, but it's not going to happen. Others see the fourth industrial revolution and the drive toward human 2.0 as a mutation driven by scientism. Yeah, scientism. Watch C.S. Lewis's The Magician's Twin on YouTube, where he warned about scientism. That's where the scientists have all the answer, and we worship what they say, and we do everything they say. And we've seen that happen these last few years. We're starting to see it now with climate. And we just have to watch out for the putting our faith in the scientists. Effectively, is a war on humanity rather than progress. Okay, and we talked about that already. Okay, and he's winding up his talk like this. Does this mean it's time to brace for the singularity, the hypothesized moment when superintelligent machines start improving themselves without human involvement, triggering a runaway cycle that leaves lowly humans ever further in the dust with terrifying consequences? Or is AI bringing a new utopia where machines do all the work and humans have a life of total leisure? That's baloney. That'll never happen. When I was a kid, they said, with all these labor-saving devices, you only have to work 4 days a week. Well, now families, they have to have 2 or 3 jobs. It's not better. But what does he say? What's his conclusion? It's neither, not yet. These networks are good at recognizing patterns, sometimes as good or better as we are, but they can't reason. Okay, so where's this going? Can software fundamentally write itself without risking crippling breakdowns? Nobody knows. But in the history of computer science, nobody's ever been able to do it. So he warns us that don't give out personal information, especially financial, and have an identity theft protection thing just in case they do steal it. Have some malware sensing on your computers, and use VPN, virtual private networks, for encrypted links. And then he says, separate the facts from opinions. They hype it up with believe, anticipate, could be. Stuff like that. But if you want to know what's going on, and they have AI, revolution, paralyzed woman speaks by a digital avatar. And they do talk about putting chips in people's brains.
I can imagine that in 10 years when we are sitting here, we have an implant in our brains. And I can immediately feel, because you all will have implants.
You all will have them. That's what they're saying. They chip people's brains now to have them try and use a limb that they can't, and roughly 12,000 chips a year going into that. And ChatGPT for biology. They're trying to use this type of machine to predict which experiments to do, which ones will have more likely to fail, and which ones won't. And then I found this just last week, Dr. McCullough's library, story at a glance. ChatGPT-like engines for biology. This is what they want to do. They want to synthesize a synthesis of completely new proteins and generate not just new proteins, but also cells, organs, and whole new organisms. And at the 2016 World Science Festival panel, they discussed manufacturing people from scratch and to genetically engineer us to be smaller in size and allergic to meat. We eat too much meat. We're destroying the climate. Well, just think of all the bison in the past. There's a book over there on the table. It's called Inconvenient Facts, which destroys all those climate alarmist arguments. And we need to understand that carbon dioxide is plant food. If we had more CO2, we'd have more food and less droughts. And there's been way more carbon dioxide in the past than we have right now. And actually, we're kind of getting low to the dangerous low end. Okay, but to see what's happening, we need to know where the money's going, okay? It's like know what laws are being put in place, like the CARES Act. That was written in like 2017. They had to look at the laws, look at the money. Okay, this is an executive order, 14081, September 12th of last year, advancing biotechnology. What do they want to do? We need to develop genetic engineering technologies and techniques to be able to write circuitry for cells and predictably program biology in the same way in which we write software and program computers. That's what the executive order says. And here's where the funding is. This is Advanced Congressional Research Service. They put $1 billion towards that end. And this is whitehouse.gov, ARPA-H, Accelerating Biomedical Breakthroughs. And who is their poster boy for that? It's DARPA. DARPA. I have not good feelings about DARPA. That's the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. So they've got another agency that's going to use a bunch of money to try to program our cells. And DARPA, what did they do? Towards a high-resolution implantable neural interface, they've invested hundreds of millions of dollars transitioning from neuroscience to neurotechnology. And this was a conference just last May. This is SynBio Beta, the Global Synthetic Biology Conference, back in May 23rd to 25th. And you can't see what I'm going to show you now because they took it down, but these are some of the talks that they gave at that conference. Scaling biomanufacturing research, bold goals, use of executive order, we took a look at that. Goals touch all industrial sectors from chemicals and materials to food, fuels, and medicine. And now they're trying to put that RNA technology into our foods and mess with our DNA that way. In Missouri, they said, hey, if you do that, you should warn people. There should be a label on the food. And then they fought it, and it didn't go through, so that it's not going to be labeled. And a bunch of money can be made. Investors luncheon, highly exclusive gathering, make a bunch of money. Investor panel for those who aren't just as exclusive. And then space health. We want to be a multiplanetary species, so we're going to do gene editing, microbes, plants, and even humans. And then we're going to have biosecurity. We need to have the best practices of all this data out there that they'll be able to take from us. And then that talks about the first commercial semiconductor platform for DNA syntheses. 6.7 billion base pairs of DNA can be synthesized in just 2 days. The evolution of the DNA supply. So this is man's devious plans, contrasting with man's or God's amazing designs. Evolution of DNA supply. Change the world we live in by programming biology itself. They're messing with the DNA, and we should not be doing that. This mRNA-based vaccines. The COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted the need for more efficient and versatile vaccine development. Future mRNA-based vaccines. And if you're interested in that topic, go into my Revival of Truth Rumble channel. Take a look at the COVID corruption, and you'll get to see how successful those vaccines actually were. Or were not. So again, but you missed that one. You can go to this one. They're going to have one in the spring. It's only going to cost $2,995 to go to that. So they're doing it again. And again, if you want to see more of it and how it's being used in the military part of it, you can see my creation talk I gave on my Rumble channel, Education, Not Indoctrination. Tyrants Forging Our Chains Today. So we had God's amazing design, man's devious plans, and I'd like to hit on a high note with God's amazing designs. I encourage you to watch Dr. Gazelle's on our TCCSA, You've Come a Long Way, Baby. Because at one point in time, you were living in fluid. And then in an instant, you had to convert to living in the air. And all these valves have to slam shut at the right point. It's just amazing. And then David Rees has something on blood clotting. There's 100 things have to happen in the right order, the right cascading effect, or it's not going to work. Just amazing. And the butterfly. Whenever I see a monarch now, I just stop and watch it. What an amazing design. Because that thing started out as an egg, and then it turned into a caterpillar, which is just a stomach with legs. It just eats and eats. It can't reproduce. And then it goes into a chrysalis, dissolves itself, and then comes out as a butterfly, which can reproduce. And the butterflies you see now are the 4th generation. They're heading down to Mexico. And those butterflies, in the spring, there was a generation, they followed the milkweed. They lay the eggs and die. Then the next generation, they fly and lay the eggs and die. And they get up all the way here in the 4th generation, or up by Minnesota anyway. And then those butterflies who have never been to Mexico, they all fly to Mexico. It's the most amazing thing. And then you got these orchid flowers. They won't give up their pollen unless a certain frequency is hit. The sound frequency emanated by carpenter bees and bumblebees elsewhere in the world is the only way to release the microscopic pollen balls from the tiny pores. And guess what frequency it happens to be? Middle C. You can take a middle C on it with a tuning fork, put it there, and poof, it pops open. How does that happen? By step-by-step evolution. And then our eye, another amazing design. And we've got a quarter million photoreceptors in each eye. And the evolutionists say, well, golly, look at how that evolved. It must have done it at least 30 times in their evolutionary worldview. Just happened. Those eyes are just incredibly complex. Same thing with bioluminescence. It happened at least 40 to 50 times independently. And then you go on to echolocation, and it talks about how dolphins and bats both have complex echolocation, and they both have about 200 genes that are incredibly similar in both species. However, they have no common echolocating ancestor in the evolutionary theory. That's because your theory is wrong. They were designed by God. Okay, and what that code word was, incredibly similar. No, they're identical. Bats and whales have identical genes specifying echolocation. And now I'm going to leave you with the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And I've been giving these creation talks for 10, 12 years. Anybody have heard of Daniel Kish? He had cancer as a kid. He lost one eye when he was 7 months old. He lost the other eye when he was 13 months old. And he started to click with his tongue. And his brain processes those sound waves so that he can see what's around him. He can hear just by processing with his tongue. And they'll bring him to a park and say, that's a tree. This is a structure. And it's got holes in the roof. And this is a court. And the basketball hoop is right. Boom. And they'll hit it. It is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And I'll let you listen to him.
As a kid, I was raised to think of myself as pretty unremarkable. My parents, their emphasis, their regard for me was you're a kid like any other kid.
He got his first bicycle at the age of 6.
I learned to click like a maniac, and I learned to ride around the neighborhood. And if I ran into a pole, my parents just didn't make a big deal out of it. Running into a pole is a drag, but never being allowed to run into a pole is a disaster.
Riding a bike blind has become a kind of stunt he does to raise awareness that the brain can adapt, and that people can do far more than they realize.
Years ago, it was just unheard of. So if you'd all close your eyes for just a moment, okay? And you're going to learn a bit of flash sonar. Now you have scientists studying it, you have instructors wanting to learn it, you have instructors wanting to teach it, you have blind people wanting to learn it. Being able to navigate comfortably in any environment, under any circumstances, nothing can be more fundamental to freedom than being able to do that.
Isn't that amazing how much God cared for a toddler and gave him that ability? And now he's teaching other people how to do that. We have an amazing God, and it's like, well, what else did he design into us that we have no idea of? Yeah, that's just incredible. And I contacted him. He's got an organization called visioneers.org. And I contacted him and said, would you like to be interviewed on RSR, Rural Science Radio? And he said, sure. And I said, can we get your parents too? I'd love to hear their mindset of getting a blind son a bicycle. As well, they're kind of microphone shy. But you can go and listen to this interview at rsr.org/Batman, and you can listen to the interview. Just the neatest thing. And then also on RSR, we got this hydroplate conference coming up. There's a red poster over there. A poster like that is hanging at St. Cloud State. It's answers all those puzzling questions for scientists. And that's going to be September 21st, 2nd, and 3rd. And I encourage you to especially see Kevin Lee's comet talk. It's amazing. He was telling those guys what they're going to find in the comet before they found it. And they said, no, we'll find something else. But Kevin Lee was right. And okay, now here's the call to action. We need to start talking to people about creation and the Bible and eternity. And I got this email from somebody. And we converted our wood burner to gas, and so we needed to get something. And she says, I've been praying that God would send intelligent Christian clients who would talk to him. You're an answer to prayer. Your conversation with Dan has opened his mind. I believe he's been watching your videos a bit because he shared one with me. Now, wow, that's pretty encouraging. And I said, well, which video did he share? I got a whole bunch of videos out there. And he shared this one. It's the hydroplate overview. I had 20 minutes at the Rotary Club, and I showed him, I squeezed the hydroplate into 20 minutes, so we fly. And again, if you want to learn more about the hydroplate, that just colors in all the details. Again, there's the QR code, and that's the poster over there. And with that, there's other resources for a thank you of any amount for the videos. Also, there is a flyer for the hydroplate thing. Take as many as you want for your churches, homeschool organizations. Get this word out. I have an abundant supply. And then also I have a card over there with my new email my new address on their new website. So anyhow, I am out of time. I appreciate your attention, and may God bless you.
Let's thank Brian.